Oh, Yvonne Ing, we are sailing with you in so many ways, in so many ways. Thank you, Yvonne, for sharing your talent. So I open with a traditional story from India. It's a story not told in a song, not sung. There was a woman who had a story, and she had a song, and she did not let them out. She just kept them hidden down deep inside. And one day while she was napping, the story escaped through her mouth, leaped right out onto the floor, and it transformed itself into a pair of men's shoes, and then planted those shoes by the front door. And then the song leaped out as well, transformed itself into a man's coat, hung itself by the front door on a peg. Later that day, the husband of the wife came home and saw the pair of shoes and the man's coat and said, "Who is here?" And the wife looked puzzled and utterly confused and says, "I don't know what you're talking about." The man did not believe and left the home, went to spend the night in the monkey god's temple while he was raging with anger. The wife stood there for the longest time trying to figure out what was going on. After a while, she grew tired and weary, and she dimmed and turned out the lamp. In that town, the lamp, the flame, when they went out, would go to the monkey god's temple and to gossip for the night. That particular flame was a bit late, but joined the other flames. And they all said, "Where have you been?" And the flame said, "Well, my couple was arguing. It took a while to get out of that house and figure out what was going on." "What were they arguing about?" said the other flames. And they said, "Well, the husband came home and saw a man's coat and a pair of man's shoes by the door, strangers he didn't know." The wife had no explanation. The other flame said, "Of course he was angry. Why not?" And the flame said, No, you don't understand," and neither did they. You see, the woman had a story in her, and it leaped out and turned into those pair of shoes. She had a song in her, and it leaped out and turned into that man's coat. They wanted revenge on that woman for not being released into the world. Oh, off in a corner, the man who was still awake had heard this story. He felt so awful for what he had done to his wife that first thing the next morning, he went home and apologized to her. And then he said to his wife, "Please tell me your story. Sing me your song." And the wife said, "What story? What song?" They were gone. They were gone. Stories, songs, poems, paintings, photos, sculptures, all that art that is within you and me, within all of us, needs to be released. Creativity, imagination, they're sources of innovation. And they, I truly, truly believe, offer the salvation for all of humanity. When they're not invited, when they're not allowed to emerge from the depths, from our creativity with innovations and new ideas, novel ways of thinking, they disappear and we all suffer. It is so important to let art out, to speak through its medium. Creativity, art is the path to healing, to resilience, to empowerment. In a time when we all feel so disempowered, it is the path to change. Last week, I shared some passionate authors, poets, and prose writers, and today we heard Jean give a wonderful rendition of Adrienne Rich's poem. She made a career out of calling out painful truths, pointing to the powerful and their hypocrisy. And in this poem titled, "What Kind of Times Are These?" she makes us look. Like many poems and brilliant works of art, it bears multiple layers. But Rich calls us to see those who disappear in our country. Did she mean those who are too poor, too black, too brown, too outspoken, and those who break rules? Did she mean those who are too disabled, too small, those who are not enough or don't fit right into our rigid social norms? Rich names the brokenness in our country and in our souls, yet with a hope born on the limbs of possibilities. And let's be clear about what art is all about. Recently, an article in The Guardian described Donald Trump Jr., the son of our president, that when he speaks, he is engaged in art performance, with goading and shocking and challenging to liberals and institutions and the norms, and particularly education. I read that and thought maybe it's performance, but it is not art. It is not creative. They are simply following a strict formula of negativity, of being anti-identification. They're not this, they're not that, but there are no ideas. There's no larger concepts. There's no there, so to speak. Creativity, art, takes risks. They want to name what others fear and offers glimpses at visions held within. I want to share some paintings with you. I'm going to share the screen here for a moment. Of some incredible artwork that is out there in this world, changing the world. This is Guernica, Pablo Picasso, done in 1937. It was an important piece of anti-war campaign. Picasso even went on to declare that paintings, they're not made to decorate apartments. He said it's an offensive and defensive instrument for war against the enemy. And we have Leonardo da Vinci's depiction of fetus in the womb. In the 1510, he was making these extraordinary anatomical drawings that were bringing a whole new vision of a human body that was truly revolutionary. And we have Jacques-Louis David, 1793, The Death of Marmot. This was a depiction of a murder of a political reader, and it was pertinent political propaganda. I love this in a more contemporary view of art. A German crew in Palmitas, Mexico. Their name was called German Crew. And it took them 5 months, and they painted gray houses with these colors, 209 houses. And it's a vision of transforming poverty into beauty. And if you are right now thinking you're too old for all this, let me introduce you to 91-year-old AGNES Kasparkova. She is from the Czech Republic, and for 40 years, she has been adding color and beauty to her village. 91 and still going. And if you're saying, I have no money and no resources, let me introduce you to TYREE, GUYTON, a German. He takes abandoned houses, rusted cars, televisions, vacuum cleaners, refrigerators, and he's formed them into incredible compositions and painted them with bright colors. Heidelberg had began to attract tourists, and TYREE GUYTON has received several international awards for redistributing what we call junk. And I want to show you what we received here in our church this past week from another Unitarian Universalist, a couple who apparently is sending these political posters to Unitarian churches all over the country, simply because they have a printer. This is political art available to the public on the internet, bringing in strong and powerful voices for social change. What an extraordinary gift these people are bringing us. What an extraordinary gift. Music also changes the world. A broader audience, even, all you have to do is have an ear and a willingness to sing. I think about music so often, as I know you all do as well. France, oh my God, every time they open their mouth with their national anthem, Le Marseillaise is a revolutionary song going back centuries to the day when they fought to defend their country against invaders. Many believe jazz was revolutionary in cultural form and function. And of course, we have to mention rock and roll, from Elvis to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, triggering a new generation into dance-infused revolutionary. Johann Sebastian Bach, also considered to be brilliant in his approach to musical innovation. I want to call out films, documentaries, what's powerful medium in changing the world. Just on the topic of slavery, so many of us were changed when the series Roots brought America to their knees with its brutal honesty of the slave life. New York Times developed a list of life-changing documentaries that are available now for you, including such things as American Factory, Free Solo, Icarus, and OJ, Made in America. Creative work like these, whether it's paintings or sculptures or music or mediums such as documentaries and movies, they require a conscious commitment to change and to challenge the status quo for a larger good. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. Everyone will see the shallowness of the ideas. Who are all these artists? I want to say it is all of us. It is you, it is me, it is everyone. We are all creative artists. Scientific American did an article back in 2012, and they wrote that innovation and creativity matters in an enormous variety of professions, not just the artists and composers, chefs, teachers, academic leaders, psychotherapists, police detectives, journalists, engineers, architects, attorneys, and surgeons. They had a long list. I'm adding clergy, parents, grandparents, anyone engaged in childcare. And I know you too have a list of some ideas about who is creative in this world. Innovation and creativity are not just gifts of a select few. If we are going to save this world, we should all boost our creative potential. It's about breaking down established ways of viewing the world, thinking outside the box, unpacking unconscious thought patterns, having an open mind, not guided by rules and constraints with two-dimensional, dualistic, and oversimplified thinking. Creativity, innovation, it looks at patterns, it unpacks them, it dives deep, excavates and explores ideas in society and culture. It finds hypocrisy, but not for personal gain, not for self-aggrandizement, but for calling forth of something better, a healthier existence for all. It actually requires a lower cognitive control, a letting go, mastering of mental porous filters, you might say. We need to put the editor to sleep. Because creativity, it actually changes the brain waves in our prefrontal cortex. We think differently. Generating new ideas is different than reviewing a math problem or a grocery list. So you have to turn the editor, the evaluator, off. But then you turn it back on when you start to select the best idea. This requires what they call cognitive flexibility. That is, you can regulate your creative filters and inhibitors. And I tell you, my friends, this takes courage. Creativity, innovation, it takes courage because you get things wrong. There's more bad ideas on the editing floor than success. In fact, failure is an absolutely necessary part of the creative process. Personal testimony here, folks. I have been creating sermons now for, well, this is a midway through a 23rd year of ministry, and I still get tangled up in a messy process every time I have to dig into another sermon again and again, and I have learned to trust the mess. It is messy, and I have learned that I will find a way out, not the way, but a way out of the mess into something new, something a little bit different. It also requires what I call a touch of mischievousness, a desire to create impact, make waves, a capacity then to stay strong in the face of the resistance and the naysayers. So people, I know you. I know you are creative, innovative. You have stories and songs yet to be voiced. So don't over domesticate yourself. Don't tame that inner voice of dissent. Let the story out. Let the song emerge. Pick up the pen, the brush, the camera. If we're all going to save the world, we need to practice creating. So I'm going to give you some pointers. It's according to Scientific American. They know what they're doing. Look at a common object. Devise 6 alternative uses for that object in just 15 minutes. Take a Kleenex. Think of 6 alternative uses for a Kleenex, a tissue, in 15 minutes. Now describe a common object in uncommon ways. Or perform a common task in uncommon ways. Make a sandwich in a different way than you usually do. And if you're struggling around something, give it some mental distance. See the problem in the future. That shifts you into more abstract problem solving. And I know we talk a lot about brainstorming with other people, but studies show that it's much better if you first reflect alone and then enter into group brainstorming. I really encourage you to use your own stimulus methods to get the creativity juices going. Don't be afraid of the darkness, the fear of failure, the pain, or the huge challenge. Some of the greatest masterpieces come from the most challenging life experiences. There's an ancient traditional story from China about a man who decided to move a mountain. This man had lived at the foothills of the Wangwu Mountains, high, thousands of meters high. And he'd been around for over 90 years, and he said, I am frankly tired of walking around these mountains to get to Yunnan. I need to go I need to move the mountain. Yes, I moved the mountain. So he gathered his family and he said, I have decided. We need to move this mountain. Wouldn't it be wonderful we had a direct path to Yunnan and didn't have to go all those hundreds of miles around? His family agreed it was time to do something, except for his wife, who looked at her husband and said, old man, old fool, you cannot move a mountain. What are you talking about? And he said, no, we can. And she said, where are you going to put all the rocks and the dirt? And the family, the kids and the grandkids and the nieces and the nephews, and they all said, well, put them in the sea. So they gathered their baskets and they went to the mountain and they filled their baskets with rocks. And then they began their walk to the sea. It was quite a distance. And when they got there, a stranger was there and said, what are you doing? You cannot tear down a mountain. And the old man sighed and said, I am not doing this just for me. I am doing this for my son and my daughter and their children and grandchildren. Mountains do not grow. So who is to say that together through the generations, we can take down this mountain? It does sometimes feel like we're moving mountains, my friends, doesn't it? So last night, my creative juices bubbled up about 2 a.m. Wouldn't allow me to go back to sleep, and least a poem poured out of my mouth and turned itself into revenge. I offer this to you in response to Adrienne Rich. Because like a tree, I hear you, Adrian Rich, your words echo down the path, whispering among the trees, bearing witness, silent sentries. I disappear when the story, the song, the vision is not shared. Like a bad mushroom trip, my mind rustles late at night instead of sleep. Oh, great release. I pull myself from the forest floor and pick up pen and paper, once a tree, and release the notes of creativity. I do not want to disappear, lest I haunt these woods with my should have and could have. So many before have risked much more than I with my white comfort where I lie. If we are all to save this world from its greatest sin, do not disappear. Then let me remind you, it takes those who have gone before and those yet to come to move a mountain. Creativity, buried deep under lid of control. Trust that image, word, deed, or thought. Let it grow. Then when its work is done and the dim roots, dig a hole. Let that voice be released. Pick up that idea or rock, place it in the basket next to the rock from the day before. Carry it to the sea, trees bearing witness. And let the story, the song, the vision be free. May it be so, amen, and blessed be.